It's a Late Fun Guys podcast. I'm Samir. Got my co-host Mark.
Let's go.
Mark, the Habs had a crazy year. We just lost in the Stanley Cup Finals to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and we just went through expansion, NHL entry draft, and free agency with tons of headlines. So let's start with a quick recap. After exposing Carey Price, Shea Weber, and Jonathan Drouin and protecting Allen at the last minute, Habs just ended up losing Fleury to Seattle. Depth defenseman, if he's a fifth or sixth pairing eventually, I don't think it's a big loss. But if he gets better than that, I think the Habs lost a key young prospect in their pool.
The issue is their depth on the right side is lacking, so you could have definitely used them in your lineup. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think the bigger win is the Canadiens to keep Carey Price. I know we were sort of hoping maybe some of us, hey, it's not so bad if they take that big cap hit off, but we just saw what Carey Price does at his best. If the Canadiens want to realistically win the Stanley Cup, there's no better player than him to lead you to that promised land. And Seattle just got scared of the injury and cap hit. That's what it came down to. And if Fleury does become a top four, it's a big loss. If he's able to stay the bottom six defenseman, then hey, that's part of the game in the expansion.
Exactly. So Price did have surgery in the offseason, speaking of his injury, and should be ready for the season opener. Bad news for Shea Weber, though, expected to miss all of next season and perhaps has played his last game of his career. That would be a very devastating loss to our blue line, as well as it could have serious cap implications for the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, it's a big loss, just his leadership in itself. We saw what he did in the playoffs. We certainly hope the best for him, but that does leave a big hole in the lineup, which we'll talk about Marc Bergevin addressing this.
Definitely that $7-8 million in cap space was spent in the last few days. But wrapping up, Drouin was the last guy who didn't play, left for personal reasons. They haven't really opened up as to what those are, but he's expected to be ready and available for a training camp. Moving on to
need him. He's still effective forward. You give him an opportunity. He'll probably with Caulfield and Suzuki, and let the kids shine, let them score and take over games. And I think he put him there. He has a good opportunity to bounce back and keep that momentum from just 2 playoffs ago.
I think the biggest thing for Jonathan Drouin is that, especially after the run this year, they know they can live without him, and I think that pressure should be relieved a little bit on him that he puts on himself, playing in Montreal and expected to be sort of the top player on this team. I don't think he needs to do that. I think he just needs to go out there and play and do what he does best, which is on the offensive side. Moving on to the draft. Controversial first round pick. This has been the news all around the NHL. The Habs drafted Mailloux, a right defenseman. Mark, was this a bad move by the Montreal Canadiens?
Well, I'm sure we all heard the story of what he did. Very controversial pick. I think though what it's become, it's not about the victim. It's not about the player. It's really just become a circus of the media pointing their finger at the Canadiens organization saying, why did you do this move? It's become sponsors not wanting to be associated. I think that's really just unfortunate because it's really, this doesn't help the victim or the player. But at the end of the day, Molson did make a commitment. I feel like that maybe could have been done earlier. They weren't maybe expecting this much of a revolt against the pick. But I think we'll have to see. Time will tell, really, the kid's true character. Was this really just an isolated incident, or is he really going to be a good team character that's going to contribute to the community? And we'll see if the Canadiens and Molson are able to, provide those what they're promising in terms of educational awareness in that aspect. So yeah. But moving right along, we also had other picks in the draft, and overall, Canadiens scored pretty well for the second rounds and after. They did draft 3 right defensemen, so I think they're looking to fill a need there. And hey, all you need is 1 or 2 of those guys to make the NHL. That's really the ultimate goal, is for every draft, you have 1 or 2 players that are going to graduate in 3 to 4 years. So you always have a constant pipeline of players Cap space is at such a premium these days that you need that cheap value talent of under $1 million coming, so that you have like a Caulfield that you could just plug into your lineup at a low cap at Suzuki, so that you constantly have a contending or a really good team. So including Kapanen. Kapanen's really the cousin of Kasperi. Hey, that could be the one.
Yeah, I mean, you never know with these draft picks. I think the Habs have done an excellent job in the last few years of building up that prospect pool and really paying a lot of attention. This year's draft was supposed to be not as strong as previous years, and looking forward to next year. So I think the Habs did trade away a couple of their depth picks for future years. So let's see how that helps. But I think you're right. The 3 right defensemen was an organizational need, and they addressed that on draft day. Moving on to free agency, the biggest headline for me was losing Danault to the Los Angeles Kings for really only a difference of 500,000.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I think it's too small of a gap. I don't understand why that happened. And
clearly, Samir was more than that. The LA told him, we don't view you just as a defensive center. We want you to take some offensive responsibility too. And I think Bergevin pigeonholed into a purely defensive center, and he wanted that opportunity to do more. And in LA, because Kopitar also takes the defensive assignments, he won't feel that burden of only having to do that. At the same time, you got some good young centers coming up in LA, like Turcotte and Byfield. So it remains to be seen how long he'll be able to be in those types of opportunities. But hey, who wouldn't want to live in LA, right?
Yeah, it is nice weather out here, definitely. But then, yeah, the Habs go on to use the cap space from Weber and sign Savard.
Yeah.
And sign Hoffman.
Best available talent, right D. It fills a gap. I mean, he's not going to be like Weber. His metrics aren't that great, but I mean, he does tend to keep shot city outside more. So that sort of fits the Canadian style defensively, because Carey Price will be able to stop it. You're hoping, 4 years, 3.5 mil, very fair contract. For sure, you would like a lesser term, but what can you do? If he could be a top 4 defenseman for at least 2 of those years, and then progress to a more bottom pair, then you're getting okay value considering free agency, and you had a need to fill.
Yeah, I think the contract was fair. Savard, I got an opportunity to see him play in Columbus live in person a few years ago. I think he's a great defenseman. I mean, he was playing in a pretty stacked Tampa team in the bottom pairing. I think he can definitely slot into a top 4 on most teams. Our defense is a little bit weaker, but hey, at the end of the day, this was not a bad kind of plug-in for losing a guy like Shea Weber. But then on the flip side, on the offensive side, we ended up signing Hoffman. This guy can put up, 60 points in a great season, 30 goals, 30 assists, can shoot the puck and can score. And definitely we need more goal scoring across the lineup.
The problem are those empty calories, are those empty points? One of his core strengths is his power play, and we sure is needed with Weber going to be gone. So you plug him there on your top PP, and that'll certainly help. But the real question is, will he be how big a defensive liability will he be? So I think you may even have to shield his minutes a bit, or put him with a KK, a smart player, put him with a Gallagher potentially to help defensively a bit that line, so you don't have just pure offense only guys. So that remains to be seen with Hoffman.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but he does. I think on the flip side, he does have a great skating stride, and that'll help him fit in with this Montreal team. And I think his past and his issues are way behind him. So hopefully that's a good sign. Corey Perry just breaking news, signs with Tampa. Mark, like you said, if you can't beat him, join him. He signs a 2-year deal.
Get to live in Florida, 2-year deal, go to 2-time defending champion. That sounds pretty good. When you look at the Canadiens lineup, though, all the holes are pretty much filled. I mean, you got Drouin, Hoffman, Toffoli, Caulfield, Anderson, Gallagher. Those are your top 9 wingers. And then your bottom, you got Armia, Lehkonen, Byron. So where's the room for Perry? He probably saw a bunch of guys left Tampa, Yanni Gourde, bunch of holes to fill there. So there's more opportunity to be with a winner. It's almost on a 2-year contract. It's a no-brainer.
So after all this, and we're pretty much wrapped up. I mean, there's a couple of notable names still left out there. I don't know how much cap space the Canadiens have really to go out and spend more money. Given what they achieved last year, I think, like you said, they filled some of the key missing holes on their team. And so I think anything coming up will just be sort of a depth signing. So question mark, after making it to the Stanley Cup Finals, barely sneaking into the playoffs, are we still a playoff team?
Well, by the way, just on depth signing, we did sign Paquette, who could be a very valuable fourth line center there. But, I'm just looking around. The divisions, of course, will be realigned to how they previously were. You got Florida. They got better. They signed all their guys, Duclair. They signed Bennett, who was a big piece for them. Tampa, still good. Toronto, great regular season team. You could say their goaltending, you could call it a break even. I mean, with Campbell and Mrazek. But you'd have to think those are your top three. And then you got Boston right there, who, I mean, I don't know if Raskin is going to come back, but they did sign Allmark, and he could actually be the best goalie signed on free agent day. I actually love that signing. We did see Kumper go in a trade, but in terms of UFAs, I love that move. So you're gonna be fighting with them. And then the Metropolitan, Philly got better. You got Ellis, they got Ristolainen, they swapped out Voracek for Atkinson. So Jersey got better. They're maybe not there yet, but you're gonna be 10 teams realistically fighting for those 8 spots. And Montreal may not have what it takes, especially considering they were 17th in the NHL this previous year. So it's gonna be tough for them.
Yeah, it's really questionable to where they land. I think the development of their young guys is going to be key to figuring out if this team can move forward and take the next step forward and be a competitive a regular season team. We know that they are built for playoffs, so they can compete in a shorter tournament, but can they compete in over 82 games, right? And like you said, I mean, if we knock out the teams that we know aren't going to be good, Buffalo, Detroit, I think Ottawa got a lot better. I don't know if they make it, but Carolina's still good. New Jersey got better. Islanders are really good. Rangers are supposed to be really good. Pittsburgh, Washington, you can never count out. So it's going to be a tough regular season. Every game's going to count. I think that Suzuki and KK are going to really need to take the next step for this team to be super, super competitive. And that Jake Allen's going to, be the one to carry the load and net during the regular season. So he's got to
Habs
play.
were rumored, by the way, to be in on Getzlav. That didn't materialize. He decided to stay in Anaheim. Why did Bergevin want him? Maybe to fill that third or fourth line center role? Was it to give a break from KK? Either way, this is going to be a huge year for Kotkaniemi. I think Bergevin needs to see what he has in him. Give him that he likes what he sees a lot, but he wants him to be more consistent. So you got to really empower him, give him excellent line mates. I think Anderson, that'd be a great fit with him, potentially a Hoffman, but you could play around with that. This is really the year to see what you have in KK.
Well, I'm a strong believer in KK. I like his vision. You can't teach that. He can skate. He is inconsistent, but he's only 21. So this is going to be his 4th season in the NHL, which is a lot, but I still think he's a young guy, and it took like a lot of guys like I think are in the same boat as him, like Scheifele, took a lot of time to develop and turn into the player that he is. So I think Kotkaniemi still has a couple more years runway in my books, but yes, now he's going to have the opportunity to get those tough minutes with Danault gone, and he really has to make a name for himself as a second line center in the NHL.
That's right.
So
and
Mark,
also a good opportunity for Evans too. When you look at your centers, you got Suzuki, KK. Who's the third line center? Hey, Evans, great opportunity for you to potentially play with someone like Gallagher and Toffoli. So we'll really see what he has too. If not, that could be viewed as one weakness on the Canadiens if Evans can't step up. Someone like Krejci would be a great fit, but it's a blend of you want to give the young centers an opportunity and see what you really have.
Yeah, and then finally gets an opportunity, a guy like Poehling, who probably had a really great start to his first NHL game with a hat trick, then gets relegated back to the AHL and then when he starts to play well again, gets and potentially get called up, gets injured. So he has an opportunity to crack this lineup. I think he has some potential to make the NHL and be an impactful player. So we'll see what happens there. Mark, we talked a little bit about the East. Who is the most improved in the East after all this, and who is the most improved in the West?
I mean, I really like what New Jersey did, just signing Dougie Hamilton and getting Graves from Colorado. Right there, you have a solid, an amazing top defensive pair. So I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs this year, but I would say in the next couple of years, especially if Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes really develop, they're primed to be in that playoff picture. So I like them, but really Philadelphia, I think just getting Ryan Ellis, I think he's a really good defenseman. I know he had a bit of an off year, but can maybe blame being in Nashville. Ristolainen, you have to think that the Habs are in on him. You'd have to think that being in Buffalo sort of affected his game. So I really like what they did to their defense ever since they lost in Skinnin. That was a big loss for them. So I could see them taking a step. And then on the West, I mean, I like Colorado because getting Klemper, that's an excellent goalie, but
That's the best move of the entire sort of off season so far. Klemper is expected to be part of the Canada gold medal Olympic team, and even though he's the third goalie or projected to be the third goalie, he's a great young talent. I think that was an awesome move. They got really a lot better in net, and they have a really good team. So he's going to have a good pathway and a good runway to success.
And on the West, I think the low key that no one's going to really talk about, but I think that who really got better, the Winnipeg Jets. We saw them, we swept them in 4 games. Their issue, their defense. And they ended up acquiring Schwartz from Vancouver and Brendan Dillon from Washington Capitals. That's huge additions, really, to add to that core. I think that will really help them to cement their top 4, and already they have great forwards. So I see them really being able to go to the next level just because of those additions.
Yeah, I think for me, depends what happens out in Chicago with Marc-Andre Fleury if he plays. I mean, they did acquire Seth Jones, so Chicago was one of the better teams in the early part of the season. I think they have some young talent. Jonathan Toews might be back, so that's good news for them. Patrick Kane can still play. They have a 50-goal scorer in DeBrincat. So I think Chicago could be a sleeper team. I love Colorado. I think they did an awesome job. And then
I just want to say a comment on Chicago because you gave up tons of assets to get Seth Jones. You paid him big money. You could have got Dougie Hamilton was $500,000 less, who's more offensively talented, and his defensive game is almost to Jones's level. And then you acquire Fleury, who may not even want to play on your team. And you did Vegas a favor freeing up their cap space, in addition to Tampa only getting a 2nd-round pick for Tyler Johnson when Tampa needed the cap space. I don't know what Chicago's doing. They're doing all these favors for GMs. I mean, I think it's a mess. I don't think their team is really that good, even with what they've added, and they're doing favors for their GMs. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I think that's sort of the difference, seeing the glass half empty versus the glass half full. I think other teams, let's talk about the new expansion team, Seattle.
Yeah.
So they went with a completely different mindset than Vegas. They didn't get the deals on expansion day. They were asking for too much. They went in with drafting a very low cap team, and then they went out and spent some money in free agency. I think Seattle is playing the long game. I think the way they look at Vegas, I don't think they thought they could create something like Vegas did and be competitive very early on. So I think they're going to go in with the mindset, like, let's have young, promising prospects and start drafting and developing them in the future. And so they did come out with a decent team. I don't think they're playoff bound. I think Vegas is still going to be a competitive team, but I don't know if they have what it takes to get to the next step without a really deep center position.
Yeah, so you nailed Vegas there. You free up that cap space from trading Fleury, who just won the Vezina, by the way. And then what do you use it with? Nothing. I think they need Jack Eichel the most out of anyone right now. That was a big problem for them in the playoffs. They didn't have the center depth. they desperately need him. They have to find a way. I don't know how, but plug him in your lineup somehow. And then in terms of Seattle, I look at that team, and I think Grubauer is overrated. He played on a great team in Colorado. I don't know if he's really back. Dreger, we'll see how he is. I like what they did on defense, getting Adam Larson. That's a big loss for the Oilers. Oilers are going to have to win, score 8 goals every game to win, losing the good defenseman Bear to Carolina and Larson. So, I mean, signing that giant with Oleksiak from Dallas, great moves. I like their defense also. They're missing top offensive talent, and I think Schwartz helps a bit. You had this opportunity to get Tarasenko.
Don't forget about Vince Dunn on the back end.
It's done, yeah. So I like their defense a lot. I think they have the right ingredients there. But you had a chance to get Voracek, who big cap hit, but hey, he could be a first line forward. So I mean, we'll see what happens there. But I think they're missing some top offensive talent, and they had the opportunity to get it. So that's the unfortunate part.
Yeah, speaking of Edmonton, big year for them. Acquired Duncan Keith, took the full cap hit. He's on the wrong end of the 30s, I guess, getting much older. But what do you think about Edmonton? Do you think they make the playoffs? And they got to win now mentality. They have to win now.
No, they got it. Like I said, they got to score like 8 goals a game. You have Koskinen and Mike Smith in net. So that's maybe the worst tandem in the NHL right after Buffalo per se. Their defense is just horrible. They traded Bear for Foegele, so their top 6, top 9 is going to be good. You just paid out Nugent Hopkins big money. You still have McDavid, Draisaitl. So I like what there is there. By the way, Zach Hyman is an excellent forward. Toronto will miss him. He fits that lineup perfectly, but I mean the defense needs some work. I know they got Darnell Nurse, but they don't have much else after that.
So for me, my biggest winner, I think, has been Vancouver Canucks. I really like what they did getting OEL. I think that even the trade they made with Arizona, OEL was a throw-in.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, have you seen him play the past few years? I used to love OEL, but he's been on the decline. The question is it because of Arizona? Will we get rejuvenated being in Vancouver? I think there's a possibility of that, and it's a big gamble for Benning to take because he had.
Right, but Connor Garland was very sought after, and I think that was the key piece of the trade. He is definitely in sort of the middle 6 of your lineup. It gives them a lot more depth, especially after losing some of the wingers they did. OEL with Quinn Hughes seems to me they have a pretty solid top 4. I really like Vancouver's top 6, and I really like their top 4 on D. And they got a pretty good goalie in Demko. So I think they're going to be a lot more competitive in the coming years, and I think they set themselves up. You can't project a player like a guy who is supposed to be a generational talent in OEL and just expect him to fall off that far that quickly after signing such a long-term deal. I think the environment in Arizona has never been winning. It's never been a good competitive team for an extended period of time. I think that being in that organization, you just hope when you get there that you play your way out. And I think all these guys, you look at their roster, all their top guys just get traded or leave. And so how do you?
I think that's why you mentioned Quemper to Colorado, probably makes them Stanley Cup favorites. And that's why Toronto's a big loser in this. They were rumored in on him. They really have an opportunity to solidify their team. They didn't want to pay the big price, a first-round pick and a solid prospect in a Timmins. So they dropped the ball there. That would have been potentially their missing piece where you have a great goaltender. So Mrazek is inconsistent, and we'll see. We'll see in Toronto what happens.
So we'll find out what happens soon. We'll be back on for season 2 of Lay Fun Guys. And thanks for watching and being part of our viewers.
Thanks, guys.